Mediterranean cyclone named Harry battered southern Italy, with Sicily suffering the worst impacts as violent winds, extreme seas, and relentless rain damaged towns, coastlines, infrastructure, and daily life across the island. Along eastern Sicilian coasts, enormous waves overwhelmed defenses, flooding streets, smashing seafront roads, damaging ports, and forcing evacuations as saltwater surged inland, eroding beaches and leaving debris, vehicles, and shattered waterfront structures.
Biceleste meno 8. Madonna! Cioè, puoi fare in 4K 60?
Adesso queste masse
Oh, questa c'è una porta. Guarda. Aia.
Hurricane-force gusts tore roofs from buildings, toppled trees, snapped power lines, and damaged communication networks, leaving neighborhoods without electricity or water, while emergency crews struggled to operate amid debris and blocked roads.
Porca troia!
Relentless rainfall triggered flash floods and overflowing torrents, inundating homes, businesses, and farmland, undermining roads and bridges, contaminating water supplies, and increasing landslide risks across vulnerable inland and coastal communities' region-wide areas. In several towns, ground collapse and washed-out streets swallowed cars, cracked pavement, and damaged underground utilities, compounding losses for residents already coping with flooded homes, ruined shops, and interrupted essential services locally. Preventive evacuations displaced hundreds from high-risk zones, forcing families into temporary shelters while authorities struggled to manage rescues, provide assistance, and protect lives amid continuing waves, rain, and structural instability conditions region-wide. Transport networks suffered severe disruption as rail lines halted, ferries suspended, ports closed, and roads impassable, isolating communities, delaying supplies, and intensifying economic damage across tourism, fishing, and coastal commerce sectors locally. Emergency services faced extreme strain as firefighters, civil protection teams, and volunteers worked non-stop, responding to floods, collapses, and maritime incidents, while hazardous conditions slowed operations and increased risks to responders significantly. Early damage assessments indicate massive economic losses, with coastal infrastructure repairs, housing reconstruction, business interruptions, and agricultural destruction combining into costs that will burden local governments and communities for years financially severely. Maritime activity was crippled as fishing fleets remained grounded, vessels damaged at moorings, and harbor infrastructure battered, cutting livelihoods for coastal families already facing repairs, income loss, and prolonged uncertainty and hardship. Beyond Sicily, Calabria experienced similar destruction as violent seas damaged harbors, coastal roads collapsed, hillsides failed, and severe weather disrupted power, transport, and daily routines across exposed Ionian communities and inland areas. Sardinia also suffered heavy impacts, with suspended ferry links, damaged ports, flooded lowlands, and destructive winds isolating towns, straining emergency responses and amplifying losses for island economies dependent on connectivity and trade. Inland areas were not spared, as saturated ground, weakened slopes, damaged rural roads, isolated villages, and disrupted supply chains, complicating recovery efforts and extending the storm's destructive footprint far from shorelines region-wide. Environmental damage was widespread, as beaches eroded, dunes flattened, coastal vegetation destroyed, and seawater contamination affected soils and freshwater sources, creating longer-term ecological consequences beyond immediate structural losses for coastal and inland. Public offices and businesses closed for safety, disrupting education, work, and services, while residents were urged to stay indoors as repeated warnings highlighted ongoing dangers from wind, flooding, and waves everywhere. Continuous emergency alerts and restrictions underscored the severity of the crisis, limiting movement, closing access to coastlines, and emphasizing that human safety outweighed economic activity during the height of destructive conditions region-wide.
Mare, maledette!
Ma non mi scagliare qua su.
No, ma